Welcome back to Julie's Village. I'm glad you're here. This episode is going to continue on with the next eligibility category under which a student can qualify for special education services under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Again, I will be taking this information from the Idaho Special Education Manual. And while criteria can vary a little bit from state to state, overall they're pretty similar. So this next category is probably the most involved for a speech language pathologist. It is a speech language impairment focusing on a speech impairment. There's three types of speech impairment that a student might have that would qualify under this category. Those three types are articulation or phonology, a voice, or a fluency disorder. I'm going to break each of those down and talk a little bit about each one of them as if they're their own category, basically. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the articulation or phonology. So this is when speech sounds there's an issue with speech sounds. For instance, if a student omits sounds or sounds get distorted or they substitute sounds or they add sounds, and these different things interfere with intelligibility. So that's when you're talking about articulation. When we're talking about phonology, we're talking about those sounds that errors happening that involve like phonology, specifically phonemes. So those are the building blocks that make up sounds in words. For instance, if I were to say the word cat, that's made up of three different phonemes, the k, the a, and the t phoneme. So if there's difficulty with those individual phonemes or sound patterns or rules governing their combinations. So for instance, some of the other common phonemes that maybe we would see a difficulty with is SH. Sometimes instead of saying sh, students will say th, something like that. So if there's difficulty with some of those sound patterns, that is an area that would bring or be brought to the attention of the team, or a team might notice if they are seeing any difficulties with some of those sound productions. And you can also bring it to the attention of the team if you are seeing concerns there. So what the team is going to look for under this area is, are there these difficulties with speech sounds? Are there those omissions or distortions or substitutions or additions? And if there are they really bringing attention? Do they exist, and are they bringing attention to the sounds themselves? So then the other piece is, are they interfering with communication? So is it bringing that undue attention and distracting from the message and from what they're trying to say? Does it make it difficult to hear what a student is trying to say? If that is present, then the team is going to consider, okay, is this temporary or is this long term? For instance, if a student just gets dental work done or they start wearing a retainer or braces, something like that, that is an example of a temporary condition that can cause these distorted or changed speech sounds. A student wouldn't qualify for special education because of that. Another thing that the team is going to consider is those cultural and bilingual or dialect things that you might hear, like, is this a common sound? Something that we hear often, for instance, if a student is an English speaker and a Spanish speaker, are there sounds that are pretty characteristically heard made in that instance? Then the team is going to look to see, is it because they just are not English speaking, they are learning English. And so some of those sounds are just typical to what we make as English speakers. Again, the TH sound is one that can be difficult for some languages or people who speak foreign languages. That TH sound is not a common sound for other languages. Then the last thing is that the team is going to look to see yes, they're not necessarily typical, but they're also the hardest sounds within an age range, hardest sounds with a blend or consonant sounds within an age range. For instance, we might notice that a 5-year-old is struggling with the R sound, but that is, again, most 5-year-olds do get that R sound, but it's not necessarily a concern yet. It's still the most difficult sound within that age range. So at 5, we're not necessarily going to be concerned, but maybe by 7. And I'm not an expert here. I invite any speech language pathologist to give any correction to anything I say or any additions that you need to. So I'm giving that as an example, but I can't remember the specific age that we're looking for. And as a team member, I relied heavily on the speech language pathologist in this category to help us to know what are we looking at. Is this typical or is this not typical for their age? Is this beyond a reasonable expectation for a 5-year-old to have mastered that R sound? Or would it go beyond? And again, I would look to the speech language pathologist for that. So if you do have concerns with some of those letter sounds, absolutely you are welcome to bring them to the team. And the team can let you know. They can invite a speech language pathologist to be there, and they can let you know right away, yeah, that is a sound that for the age they are, well, many at their age do have that sound. There are some that don't. If they don't have it by this age, this is when we're concerned. So right along with that, if the team identifies, yes, we do see these difficulties with sound production, we can't say that it's due to one of those other factors. So again, the temporary dental change or temporary change, including dental changes not changes, but speech patterns due to bilingualism or learning English or dialect. And we can't say that they are beyond what we would expect for their age. Then the team is going to dive in a little deeper, look at what's going on, going to conduct a battery of assessments just to see how is this impacting. Is there a bigger concern going on, and how is this impacting the student throughout their school day? So as the team looks at this, one thing that has to happen is that the speech language pathologist is going to conduct at least 2 procedures or 2 assessments, and at least one of those has to produce a standard score. Then the speech language pathologist is going to be looking to see, did they score at or greater than 1.5 standard deviations below the mean? And right along with that, are they at or below the 7th percentile? If their score falls below these ranges, then the team could say that yes, there is the presence of a speech language impairment, speech specifically in this articulation and phonology area. Then at that point, the team is going to look and see, okay, is there an adverse impact? If a student is falling below, most likely it means that there is something going on in their communication as far as either difficulty communicating their ideas clearly, or it would draw undue attention to their speaking patterns. And at that point, the team would say, let's put some specially designed instruction in place to help support this student. So if all of those things are there, the team says, yeah, we see that there is a need. We see this presence of an articulation or phonology difficulty. yes, it's adversely impacting the student, and yes, we see a need for specially designed instruction. That student would qualify for special education services under this category of speech language impairment, specific to speech impairment. So the next area that we're going to look at for how a student could qualify under this category is looking at voice. Now, voice is looking at how a student, or if there's any concerns with the absence or abnormal production of voice, and that could include their voice quality, pitch, intensity, resonance, and this can come from functional or organic conditions. So, for instance, was there some kind of accident that impacted the jaw or the way a student produces speech or the throat? Or is it something that they were just born with or uh, came along as just part of a natural side effect of another condition? So, if that's the case, then one thing that has to be considered is this something that is caused by a laryngeal based voice disorder? If that is the case, then an ENT would be needed to treat this disorder. It wouldn't be, or an ear, nose, throat doctor would be needed to treat what's happening. It wouldn't be solved by a speech language pathologist. So, this is one area where a child would actually need a physician's statement from an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat doctor, or a related type of doctor, showing or indicating that no, this isn't caused by a laryngeal condition. That would mean that a student would have benefit from being with a speech language pathologist. So, for example, if this is something that needs to be treated by antibiotics, a speech language pathologist is not going to be able to correct what is going on. So, if there is a concern, it is not caused by any kind of, again, that laryngeal based illness, then the team would look for a couple of things. They're going to look to see, okay, does this interfere with communication? Again, does it draw undue attention to the voice difficulties rather than what is being said? Does it adversely affect the speaker or the listener in their ability to, again, just communicate, to be able to share and exchange ideas and thoughts? And is it inappropriate to the age and gender of the speaker? So, one of the ways that the team is going to look at this is that they're going to do or look at a voice production rating scale. And the speech language pathologist is going to look to see, do their results fall in that moderate or severe range? And they are going to use an assessment that compares averages of people between 3 and 21 years of age, or compares what is expected for people between the ages of 3 and 21 years of age. So again, there's some things that do not qualify under voice. That is this a temporary physical factor, such as allergies, a cold, tonsils, anything along those lines? They're going to also consider, is this due to a regional dialect, a difference, an economic disadvantage, or any kind of, again, that learning to speak English? And they're also going to look to see, does this interfere in any way with their educational or developmental performance? If any of those pieces are there, a student does not qualify under this area. But if the team says, yes, something is going on, it impacts their voice, we do see it interfering with their ability to communicate clearly, for their message to get across and for their receiver to understand that message, then the team would again conduct a battery of assessments looking for the impact on a student during the school day. They're going to look to see if there is a need for specially designed instruction. And again, once again, if we're seeing that it's to the point that it's showing up as moderate or severe, then it is very likely that there is an adverse impact on them, on either their educational performance or that developmental piece, especially looking at that social factor. How is it impacting the way that they are viewed by their peers and their confidence, their ability to communicate with peers, and their even desire to interact with peers? So it's again very natural that if that is the case, we are seeing that adverse impact, then yes, we do want to do some kind of specially designed instruction to help them make those gains and to be more successful at school. So if all of that is there, the team says yes, again, a student can qualify for special education services under that category of speech language impairment, specifically looking at speech. Then there's one final area, and that is the area of fluency. So in this area, what the team is looking for is there a presence of stoppages? That means that there's a repetition of a sound or a syllable or a single syllable word, or there's a prolongation of sounds, or there's a blockage of airflow, and that impacts the effect. Any of these things then could impact their ability to communicate or the effectiveness of their communication. So in this case, this disorder can occur with abnormal rate of speaking, those stoppages that we talked about, and if they do occur, then the team is going to look at further assessing if these stoppages or those repetitions are due to normal development of disfluencies as part of normal speech development, they wouldn't qualify. So again, this is something that there's an age typicality for. So there are some times, especially when students or children are very first learning how to communicate, their vocabulary is growing, there's an element of searching for the right word. If there's any kind of stoppages that occur because of that, a student wouldn't qualify. So again, a team is going to use, or a speech language pathologist is going to use a rating scale. They are going to use a fluency communication rating scale, and they're looking to see, does a student fall in the moderate or severe category for what is expected, and these scales are designed for students age 3 to 21. So as they're looking at that age-based piece again to look for, does this fall within moderate or severe of what we would expect for their age? If that is the case, if the team says that, yeah, they fall within the moderate to severe range based off of their age, then again, the team is going to conduct a battery of assessments to look at, okay, what might be going on and how is this impacting the student throughout the school day? And they're going to look to see, is this adversely impacting their educational performance? Once again, if they're falling within the moderate to severe, then most likely it is adversely impacting their student, either in that academic piece, their ability to communicate what they know and what they understand, or that social piece. Are people giving more attention to the communication? Is it interfering with their ability to effectively communicate their ideas and their thoughts? And if that is the case, then once again, it is very likely that they are going to need some specially designed instruction to help them, again, feel that success at school and make those gains to be successful at school and to be successful in those peer relationships. So one thing to note here is that this is an area where a speech language pathologist might be the only one providing services. So if a child qualifies for a speech language impairment, specifically that speech piece, speech might be the only service on their individualized education plan or program. But If the team determines, or if a child qualifies in another area, but speech is also a need in any of these areas, whether that's articulation, the voice, or the fluency, then this could be a related service. So they might have another primary disability category that they fall under, and they're primarily being serviced under that category, but they can receive speech language services, and specifically speech services, as a related service right along with occupational therapy or physical therapy if that is what's needed. So if that is the case, then, or either way, a student would qualify for these services. They might get them just in isolation and only those services, or they might receive those services in conjunction with other services throughout the school day. If you have any other input that you would like to add about this category or speech language pathology in general, I invite you to leave that in the comments. If you have questions about this, I invite you to also leave that in the comments. If you have questions or topics or people that you would like to see on this channel or interviewed in future episodes, I invite you to leave that in the topics as well. If this information is helpful for you, I invite you to like, share, subscribe. That makes all of this more accessible to others and it can potentially help others that need this information as well. Thank you so much.